Zoom now and speak to political science lecturer at UCC, Dr. Jonathan Asante. Thank you so much for your time here on the Pulse. Also on Zoom is the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, Haruna Mohammed, as well as Alidu Seidu. He's a political scientist. And we're just looking at so far the president's tenure since he assumed office and their positions about his performance. I'll start with you, Alidu Seidu. What's your personal assessment of his performance since he assumed office 2 months ago? You might have to unmute for me so that I can hear you clearly.
So good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers.
Good afternoon.
I think the first point of assessment is having a benchmark. And when you look at what this government did, they set a benchmark on timely basis. If you look at basically performance and campaign of political parties, you usually start with a manifesto. And the manifesto are mostly political promises that you seek to do when you are elected. What this government did was to move forward just beyond the proposals, policy proposals, and placing specific timelines on them. So in my first 120 days, I seek to achieve this. In the next 1 year, I seek to achieve this. In the next 2 years, those kind of things. So it gives us a very interesting benchmark to be able to measure its performance. If you look at what it has been able to do within the first 60 days, it is actually remarkable in terms of interventions that the government has made. So it has made a lot of interventions in the energy sector, in the education sector, and also under the economy and several other sectors. Then there were preparatory. So if you look at the energy sector, for example, when they first came to power, there was this idea of fuel shortages that they were able to deal with. I remember the Julius Deborah, chief of staff. The chief of staff chaired that particular meeting, and they had several interventions in the education sector when senior secondary students were complaining that there's no food, whether they will open or not will open, and it's instruction to the buffer stock to release food. So there are several interventions of that kind. Then you look at preparatory grounds, where we have the National Economic Dialogue the National Economic Dialogue and the National Dialogue and Education, and then the operation will cover all loots and the preparatory work that they have done for possible prosecution and several other preparatory policies. So all these preparatory happenings are supposed to kickstart formidable policy implementations that will come. But apart from that, there have been several other promises that he has made that he has been able to do, including the reduction of ministers to 60, which we have seen the record number of days that the government has set his cabinet, be able to organize and put his cabinet up. You are looking at the reduction of fares in the Hajj program, which was 75,000 to 62,000. You are also looking at fulfilling the promise of adding additional holiday for Muslims when during the Eid. That one has been done. You are looking at security effort. His visit to Baku and reactivating the traditional option of settling the Baku crisis and seeing how things can be done. You are looking at the ban and then the reversals on government appointees acquiring and buying state lands. You are looking at asset declaration, where he led the rule in declaring his asset first and calling on all his appointees. So there are a whole lot of things within this very short period that he has been able to do. And there's still a lot to that are outstanding, including the promises to review taxes, including the provision of the code of conduct for appointees. You are looking at a whole lot of other things. But all these things, we can see whether it will come to fruition or it will not when the budget is read. So I think once the budget is read, we'll see some of these things that will be captured and those that may not be captured. But when you ask me on a score, on a scale of 100, what this government has been able to do, I think I'll score it very high in terms of the achievement. But I still believe that
on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you place their performance so far?
I think I'll score a 7 out of 10 in terms of performance, what it has been able to do. But that doesn't mean there's still a lot outstanding. For example, if you look at the Galamsey menace is still something that is coming out throughout in the news. We haven't seen a lot that has been done, though they may be effort, but I think it's still something that government have to give a lot of attention. And other critical issues that he has inherited, that he promised to deal with, which he still hasn't made the effort to do. So I still think it's still early days yet, but if you ask me to score the government within this short period, I think 7 out of 10 is not bad.
Alidu Seidu scores government 7 out of 10. He admits that it might be early days yet, but then so far he ranks their performance as great. Let me bring in Haruna Mohammed. He is Deputy General Secretary of the NPP. I want to get your initial thoughts. Your government having left office, we have heard from President John Dramani Mahama paint a grim picture of the economy that he has received and that you handed over to him. Honestly speaking, what's your assessment of his first 60 days in office?
Good afternoon to your cherished viewers. Did I hear you say first 60 days in office?
Yes.
Is it really 60 days?
It is, because, 2 months.
So in 60 days, out of that's 50% of his promise on the 120 days.
Yeah.
And when I checked on your scorecard, you scored him 6 out of 26. So roughly mathematically, that's about 20% of what he has been able to. Out of the 6 that you have scored him, some of them are activities that he actually began, which he has not completed. I believe that you have ticked nominating within 14 days his officers in terms of those he is going to use to work, which was not completed on time. If you check the date, it should have been on the 20th of January, but this was done beyond 20th of January, so it was not an achievement based on target. You look at the constituting the leanest government and the most efficient government under the Fourth Republic, and he indicated that this would be done within 90 days. Even though it's not up to the 90 days, it cannot be taken to be a complete representation of performance. But this should be a work in progress. So if you also check holding the National Economic Dialogue, I can say that, yes, they have done, but we cannot have a result attached to that. There is difference between input, process, output, and outcomes. So you cannot virtually be looking at output, which is numbers, with respect to outcomes. So outcomes must be the measure. But today, you cannot measure the outcome of the National Economic Dialogue. Again,
before we move on from the dialogue, I just wanted to find out, as a political party, you were invited for that dialogue. Why did you fail to show up, really?
We were not invited for the dialogue. I state again, we were not invited for the dialogue. I did have an interview on this particular matter, where I was pointed to the fact that Fifi Kuti had mentioned that the MPP was indeed invited. I said, the government of Mr. John Dramani Mahama as president is not an extension of the NDC headquarters. So if indeed the MPP was going to be invited, it was not in the mouth of the National Democratic Congress General Secretary to indicate our invitation or not.
But a key member of the planning committee, Professor John Gachi, said here on the Joy News channel that the NPP was invited. Are you saying they lied?
I am telling you that we as MPP, I sit at the National Secretariat of the MPP. As I speak to you, you can see my boss picture behind me, the General Secretary of our party. We have not received any document with respect to invitation to the National Economic Dialogue. Same as the Education Dialogue. Nobody had invited us. We are a party that believes that human capital development of our country, developing the capacities of persons within the country who are going to be the future leaders of our country, are very much important and key. So if an invitation was extended to us, the leadership of the party would have taken a decision as to who is going to attend to this particular all-important event. Mind you, in the first instance of his same economic dialogue, we were not invited. They went to Senti. We were not invited as a political party. So That has been settled.
But
You are
as
asking
key
me about my
managers of
opinion.
the economy, allow me to come in at this point, as key managers of the economy, the previous managers of the economy, you ought to have been present, shouldn't you have, just to get a sense of what exactly you plan to do?
But see, what at all would they be looking out from us? The point is clear. When we were handing over of political governance to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, we handed an economy where we had 23.8% of inflation rate. That is just something that is just a little above the IMF target of 22%, as just opposed to an inflationary rate we took from them of 15.4%, which had exceeded the IMF target by 5.3%, which was a target of 10.1%. So an excess of 1.8% and an excess of 5.3%, it tells you that we have overperformed and we handed a healthy economy to them. You check our GDP growth where we handed over to them. We took a GDP growth of 3.4%, where there was a target of 5.4% that they did not achieve. We handed over an economy of 6.4% with a target of 4%, which we have exceeded over by 2%.
So based on your books, you appear to have done so well. But the president has painted a very grim picture. Allow me to come in at this point. The president has painted a grim picture about the economy. During his first State of the Nation address, he said that we're, quote unquote, in crisis. And that's his description of the economy you left behind. Crisis. He painted a grim picture about key sectors of the economy, the energy sector, cocoa board, all drowning in debt. And you say you don't want to be a part of a process that could help fix some of these challenges. Is that the case?
Firstly, that is why we have continued to refer the people of Ghana to 2013. In 2013, President Mahama was handing over to himself. In fact, he was the president of the Republic from July 2012 and handed over to himself by default because we challenged the results of the 2012 elections in court. Lo and behold, he was sworn in as president, and he handed over to himself as president who had spent the unexpired period of Professor Mills and handed over to himself. What did he say? He said the economy was mismanaged when he was the vice president and subsequently became the president of the Republic. He said, what is the key word there? Lamentation. So he is known to lamentations when clearly he knows that the figures and the data do not support what he is saying. But however, it was a doom on the people of Ghana because investors were scared. President Mahama was indirectly telling investors to run away. He was indirectly building no hopes onto the people of Ghana. When he was interviewed and asked, are you the hope of the people of Ghana? He said, certainly he cannot be the hope. So he was stating the fact, what has been the state. And he was also stating a fact related to his own book. He wrote, My First Coup d'etat. He said that as a young man riding bicycle down the lane, he could not take a decision on his own. So it was a difficult task for him to take a decision to realign himself to the true fact. An economy that you handed over a deficit of trade balance of -2 of GDP, and somebody is handing over a surplus of 5.9 to you, you call it an ailing economy? A current account balance that you handed, which was a -3.1%, which is in negatives. That is a deficit in nature. Somebody is handing a surplus of 4.2% of GDP to you, which is surplus. And international reserves, you handed over of a 3.5 month of cover, which is 6.2 billion. Somebody is handing over 8.9 billion of 4 months to you. You say it's alien? This is clearly a dishonesty.
Haruna, stay with me. Stay with me. I'll come back to you as we look at other sectors of the economy and your honest opinion about how they have managed the economy so far. But let me bring in Jonathan Asante. He's also a political scientist. I'll start with your assessment. First 60 days in office.
Firstly, just a little point of correction. It is political analyst, not a political scientist.
Okay. Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
great. I think that the country that we are running, it boils down to leadership. And I believe that the kind of leadership that the president is currently providing is something that we must all doff our heart for. What I see in President Mahama, let me reiterate again, I am saying that the loss that he suffered in 2016 was indeed a good omen, not a bad one at all. We are having a different president altogether. And you could see when you find out from Global Info Analytics data that came in 17th of February 2025, 74% of Ghanaians that were interviewed said that the country is now headed in the right direction, as opposed to 29% in November 2024. And that was under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo and that of Dr. Bawumia. Now, 76 approval rating for the job that the president is doing, as opposed to about 17 or so in the previous regime. Now, what I'm seeing now is a consensus building leadership in President Mahama. And that is the more reason why his scoring is very high. Because if you look at the various sectors of the economy, what are we talking about? The economic dialogue is very important in the sense that knowledge does not always lie in the head of those who have been given mandate to run the affairs of the nation. It is just a privilege that all of us cannot be president at the same time. So it's a privilege for an individual to be given that opportunity. But if he realizes that I can tap into the expertise of citizens of this country so that we build that consensus, I think that is quite a mark of a good leader. Apart from that, let us not kid with issues of in education, for example. Education presents a humongous problem on all our on the nation, in the sense that from the primary, especially in the public sector, from the primary to the secondary, they are all in bizarre shape. Does it? I mean, look at it, for example. Yesterday, someone was telling me that the child is vacating and coming to stay in the house for some number of months. Meanwhile, the months that he stayed in school, are shorter than the one that is coming to spend at home. So, as a nation, there is the need for that consensus building, a change in direction, and to ensure that the education of our children do not suffer. I mean, today, if you look at the educational sector, for example, if someone made an A1 in maths, and the person is given a combination like that in a university, says he cannot do the maths. How did you get A1? So we are top dressing the issues. So I believe that the kind of leadership the president is providing now, I'm not surprised that his rating is quite high. And I think with that consensus building approach to leadership, he will succeed. Though he has 4 years, I don't think that the years really matter. It is the impact that you'll be able to make within that period.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan, for that point. Let me bring in the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. We've been hearing from Jonathan Asante and Dr. Lidu Seidu applaud this administration for some of the key policies they have ensured that they are implementing within their first 60 days in office. We know that this administration promised Ghanaians a 120-day social contract. From where you sit, how would you rate your performance so far?
Good afternoon to our colleagues on the other line. I think that one thing that you would say of the last few months of President Mahama's reign as president is the effort to keep a cool, calm, collective pace of governance. Our focus is to build a Ghana that can contain each and every Ghanaian, where a platform is created for every single Ghanaian to prosper. In view of the actions that we have seen in the last 8 years, we are confronted with several crises as a country. The conversation have not been whether or not a government can solve all the problems we are faced with as a country, but the quality and focus of leadership. Today, you don't have rascals in governance again. You do not have people who have excuse to solve the problems of the people of Ghana. President Mahama's effort is to confront the problems that affect every single Ghanaian. We have done what the previous government couldn't do. In the last few days, we've called for an economic dialogue. I heard my other counterparts saying they were not invited, and that is a mark of dishonesty. I think the MPP is better in talking than solving problems. And so it didn't make any difference whether they attended or they didn't attend. But what is important is that President Mahama extended an invitation to every well-meaning Ghanaian who had anything to contribute to solving the problems that confront every single Ghanaian, created by Akufo-Addo, President Akufo-Addo, former president, and his regime. The MPP failed to show up. The people failed to show up. If you say they were not invited, how did Addison, the former governor, got invited? He was present at the ceremony. The finance minister, Honorable Amin Anta, and Kenufuriata, who are the bedrock of the problems that we are facing today, failed to show up. The energy minister, who became the running mate of the MPP in the previous election, failed to show up. These were managers of sensitive areas of an economy. The agric minister, Honorable Brian Achampon, who was in charge of our food security, failed to show up. Indeed, I can tell you that you see the level of peace in Ghana today because Ghanaians have the assurance that a transparent, honest government is in place, and President Mahama is fulfilling it. All the noise you see from the MPP is to turn our problems into politics. Let's normalize noise making. Let's normalize the use of vulgar words. Let's normalize insults. Let us say that NDC have also failed, so that at the end of the day, the conversation is politics as usual. But President Mahama is committed to resolving issues of quality education, which I've heard my other senior talk about, issues of job security, issues of food security, issues confronting our health. Is it not surprising that after 2-3 months of exiting government, the finance minister of the government would have to seek medical attention outside the country? And yet the MPP doesn't see anything wrong with it. They don't see that that singular act undermines their existence as a government. They do not see that. They failed to provide medical facilities for the people of this country, but yet they chopped and spent and stolen from the people of Ghana. President Mahama says, even the projects that you couldn't complete, we will complete them because they are good initiatives for the people of this country. The MPP says that they didn't see all of these initiatives, but I can assure you that for me, I'm an extremist, politicized person as an executive of a party. President Mahama, who is the president of this country, has tried so much to strike a balance where he is trying to satisfy a bit of the political party, he is trying to satisfy civil society, he is trying to satisfy other people who are not exposed to political parties so that we can build a country together. That is what President Mahama is doing. So again, you see clearly the difference between hot-headedness and a collective governance. Ghanaians are at peace. Ghanaians are settled because they know that the regime that was a national security threat to our own existence is put aside. And at least the MPP pride themselves that they know how to steal them the NDC. But we are in power to govern and to create a platform for all Ghanaians to prosper.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bande. He is Deputy General Secretary for the NDC. Now, let me wrap up with my guest on the line, Dr. Alidu Seidu. I'll wrap up with you just 1 minute, please, on Zoom. I just want to get your closing remarks, and then I'll also come to Jonathan Asante as well, and then wrap up with Haruna Mohammed. 1 minute each.
Okay, thank you so much. Governance is a process. And the way you begin relative to the resources that are available to you, but also relative to the human resources you are able to put together, can help you to achieve a lot. Within this short period that this government has started, we have seen a lot of positive attributes that if it's going to continue to build on, it will be able to achieve a lot of the promises that it has promised Ghanaians, fulfill them, and then be able to do more. So I still believe that it has started well. It shouldn't be complacent and should build on this particular foundation that it has laid. And I think he'll be able to achieve remarkable good things that it has promised Ghanaians.
And let me bring in Jonathan Asante. Your final remarks, 1 minute. You will have to unmute for me to hear you clearly. Whilst you unmute, let me just wrap up with Haruna Mohammed. We've been hearing from Mustafa Bande some key concerns he has raised. He says that, unfortunately, your submission that as a political party you did not receive an invitation is a mark of dishonesty. He goes on to state that the president indeed extended an open invitation really to every well-meaning Ghanaians, and you failed to show up. Your final remarks on that, 1 minute, and then we'll let you go.
Well, firstly, I saw that you gave my colleague Mustafa a very smooth engine to run. He was just running without scratches. But when I'm going to speak, a lot of scratches come in.
That I disagree with you, but then
you are my good friend.
That I disagree with you, but then let me give you the smooth platform to also land.
Well, thank you. I would want to reinstate again. I don't know whether Mustafa Bande is the recipient of letters at the MPP headquarters. It's absolutely untrue that we were invited. Let's look at it this way. You have gone to describe us as persons who have mismanaged the economy. You are calling them to come to do what? Because you said we have destroyed the thing. You are calling us to come to the dialogue to even do what? He's talking about mentioning energy minister, mentioning former finance minister. For God's sake, you should check the handing over notes. All these persons have clearly indicated the state of the economy, the state of their sectors in their respective handing over notes as we handed over to them. He mentioned about President Mahama making sure that he's getting a lot of people across the board. This is an exposure to every meaning Ghanaian that those who had portrayed themselves as civil society and the MPP had the cause to complain that these persons were clearly speaking for the opposition NDC then has been clearly rewarded by President Mahama, and everybody is looking at it because we all know how these persons, the roles that they have played in the campaign of the NDC. So it is not true that he's appointing from civil society and appointing from where and party and all that. That is not true. He's appointed those who have actually worked for him. And that is what he has done. We are not faulting him, but it is clear for you to be able to let us know where you stand. And that is what we really appreciate. I heard them speak about the number of presidential staffers and also mentioning about those who have worked at the Office of Government Machinery. And he's saying that this is the most efficient. Please, we are not interested in looking at quantity. We are looking at quality. You can have the leanest number ever. You can have 10 people whose salary will be more than even 100 people. So the cost component here is what bothers the people of Ghana, not the number of people. So expenditure is the clearest point. And that is why Honorable Abu indicated in Parliament that these are the criteria set in the laws. And if you appoint this and that, look at their regional organizers. They have been appointed as presidential staffers. They have been equated to deputy ministers of state. And these are things that we are all cross-checking. These are things that we are looking at, that the expenditure it brings to the good people of Ghana, it is what matters, not the number of people that is appointed. Again, I thought that we would have had enough time to look at the 3 E's because I heard your researcher, your lead researcher, he made a very clear and brought the conversation on table as to how we are going to chat. One, on economy. We all know that President Mahama has not submitted any budget. He has no any commitment when it comes to matters of the economy. So basically, he's enjoying from the goodwill of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And whatever expenditure they do now, whatever they have in their kitty, whatever impact they make within the strides of economic management is from what we have left over to them. In terms of energy, what have they left? Today, what we left for them, it is what is being worsened. Now, companies cannot work. Small businesses that would have channeled their capital to buying and fostering on to look at materials that they would have been buying every day, they would have to use it to go and buy a fixed asset called a generator. A generator that will reduce cost of doing business for them and increase cost of management of their business sectors. What about education sector?
Haruna, I would have to let you go at this point. You might have to wrap up in 30 seconds because I have given you the smooth platform to land and you've been landing for the past 3 minutes. So please, in 30 seconds, please wrap up.
Yes, please. Persons with disability have gotten admissions into the universities. They have not been supported as President Mahama has said. First-year students have gone to school. Nobody has paid their fees. Up to today, people are questioning. And these are matters we have to look at. Clearly, on the 3 E's, John Mahama has 0/10. And that is the score I am going to give him.
Thank you so much, Haruna Mohammed. He is Deputy General Secretary of the NPP. And that's how we wrap up that conversation. We're looking forward to the budget presentation, really. Jonathan Asante is still with us. 30 seconds, Jonathan, your final words as we let you go.
Well, I just wanted to say that the level of hypocrisy on the part of the opposition may create a situation where they may stay in opposition for quite some time. You will have to give credit when it is due. The man is showing consistency in leadership. He says he's going to give his 60 ministers. The cost implication is there. He says that his people will not fly first class. That brings some cost implications. And of course, look at the Independence Day, cutting down the budget over 90%. That level of consistency in leadership is something that we must all praise. And if we really want to get to wherever we want to get to, we must really encourage him to do more. And you see the last one, saying that the students have not been paid their fees, those disability. You're the same person saying that the president has not even presented his budget. So how is he able to do so if the budget has not come? You cannot appropriate and reprobate. And I think that it is also not fair on the part of the president or the government.
Thank you so much. You're still watching The Pulse, and we'll be taking a quick breather here on The Pulse. When we return, though, we're celebrating women across the country. Ahead of International Women's Day, we'll be having a conversation with some key figures in the media space in the country very shortly after this quick turn. And we'll also tell you about the environment. We'll speak to Arocha here on The Pulse. Please stay tuned in.